I have a very important question for you. Are you struggling to find the perfect holiday look? With the holidays rolling in and an event-filled calendar ahead, I'm sure that you want to look and most importantly, feel your best. But if you're tall, finding clothes that fit just right can be a real challenge. With shorter inseams and weird proportions and so forth and so on, the struggle is real. And that's where our sponsor, Whitney Allison, comes in. They're on a mission to design high quality, timeless pieces made specifically for tall women like us. I actually tried on their fall winter capsule blazer from the vegan leather collection at the Tall Size pop-up shop, and let me tell you, the quality is unmatched. Whether it's a corporate holiday party or a casual get-together with friends, their pieces are designed to mix and match effortlessly with what you already have in your wardrobe. Head on over to whitneyallison.com and shop their fall winter collection today. All of their links are going to be in the description, and huge thanks to Whitney Allison for sponsoring today's episode. Good morning, everybody. You are currently listening to a Tall Girls podcast hosted by a tall girl named India. I hope everyone who's tuning in today is doing super fantastic. Before I get into this episode, I do want to say, make sure you're following me on my socials at a Tall Girls podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest so that you can stay up to date on all of the latest podcast episodes and catch a glimpse of my everyday life. Also, feel free to leave me a review and let me know how tall you are. I'm genuinely curious. I also have a monthly newsletter that's now weekly because it's Podmas. 2 issues went out. There's 2 more left to go, so make sure you subscribe before Podmas is over. Everything is going to be linked in the description. Really quickly before I get into this episode, if you want like a nice, fun, cool experience, unique experience, I would recommend a perfume making class. And no, it's not just for the girlies. There were guys there too. They have all different types of scent. Well, they should. I don't know. It depends on the one that you go to. But they have all different types of scents there. And if you're like a scent person like me, because I don't know, I feel like I have a very particular type of scent that I want, and I want something very vanilla based but also very warm and very sweet, and I just haven't found that in stores just yet. But I was able to make my own and it smelled so good. I don't know if you want to know this, but I just mixed vanilla. My base was vanilla, so I had a lot of vanilla in there. I had vanilla, black currant, lime, almond, strawberry, but I did post about it over on my Instagram by now, so I would definitely recommend checking that out if you want to like know the scent that I picked out. Maybe instead of merch, we're coming out with a perfume line, a Tall Girls perfume. You can let me know. But yeah, if you want a cool, unique experience, I actually would recommend a perfume making class. It's actually it's like kind of relaxing, a great way to socialize with new people and, just do something that you can bring home for yourself that you made yourself and you know that you would like. So I think that it's really cool. It takes a lot of time though. It takes like 2 to 3 hours. I will say that. So make sure you carve out a good amount of time for that. Now for the episode. Today we're going to be talking about weight, and you're probably thinking to yourself, girl, this podcast is about height, especially being tall. Like, why are we talking about weight? Just trust the process. When we get into it, you're going to understand. But I would like to provide a little bit of a disclaimer. If you get triggered by talking about weight, I would recommend just not tuning into this episode at all. I mean, I don't really make any unhealthy comparisons or anything, but I do make comparisons. I also put out like specific numbers out there. I mean, I don't share my own personal weight, but I give other types of weights, for example, whether it's on the internet to prove a point or if somebody on social media outright said their weight. So if you get triggered by weight and numbers on a scale or anything of that sort, just don't listen to this episode at all. Protect your peace. I want you to be able to listen to this podcast and have a good time and enjoy it. And if weight isn't something that you enjoy talking about or hearing about, don't listen. There's other episodes to listen to on a Tall Girls podcast. But if you're curious about this type of thing, especially the weight of tall women, let's dive into. Okay, that sounds really creepy, but let's just dive into it. We've all heard growing up, never ask someone how much they weigh. because it's rude, right? But when it comes to tall women, it's like this rule doesn't apply, because not only do creepy strangers ask about our weight, some tall women voluntarily give this information. Why is this the case? The question is, are we normalizing this or feeding into some strange obsession with tall bodies? Well, there are, I would say, two sides to this story when people are asking tall women about their weight. So when I was doing research for this podcast episode, I came across a lot of Reddit forums. Actually, there are Reddit forums specifically for tall people, for tall women. There's this, I don't know what they call it, like a subreddit or for whatever. They have like a group called r/tall girls, I think. And, you know, people were actually asking like questions about weight. I'm assuming tall women asking other tall women in the forum about their weight. And then there were, I'm assuming, tall women in the comments responding with their weight. But it just seems like in general, tall women can be curious about weight, especially the weight of other tall women. And it's kind of like, why? I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, if you have genuine curiosity, yeah, you can always try to find your answer. But it's kind of a thing of, why are tall women curious about other tall women's weight? Well, the thing is, I personally think, after looking through a couple things and doing research on the internet and so forth, I personally think that a big reason or a big factor is because many of us find out that we weigh more than our shorter friends. And I don't know, sometimes it could be like, oh, like, but we're so fit, we do this, we do that. Like, we have practically the same body type. Like, why do I weigh more than my shorter friend? And you know what? That's a valid question to ask. And then on top of that, sometimes you guys know BMI, body mass index, you know, that whole thing that was like a big thing way back when. Yeah, they also may consider tall women to be overweight as well. So after, you know, the BMI standards calling tall women overweight, and or finding out that your shorter friends weigh less, sometimes even significantly less than you do, some tall women just may take it to the internet to see like, okay, is this just me or are other tall women going through this as well? Turns out tall women may actually scientifically weigh more than their shorter counterparts. It honestly depends. If you put two women who are a similar age and have similar body types next to each other, it's more likely that the tall woman is going to weigh more than the shorter woman, because height means more bone, more muscle, and just more everything. But according to BMI, or body mass index standards, which honestly I should really include a definition of so that you guys can actually understand what it is. So I'm going to find a video of it and I'm going to include it here.
Body mass index is a measurement that takes into account a person's height and weight, and it's used as a quick and dirty general way to classify someone as being underweight, overweight, normal weight, or obese.
So BMI, which has long been thought to be the pinnacle of weight-associated risk stratification for physicians and medical providers all around the world, has now been replaced by BRI. What is BRI? BRI stands for Body Roundness Index. BMI stands for Body Mass Index. The difference between the two is that the Body Mass Index just takes your height and your weight, and it doesn't account for certain parameters. Now, BRI, Body Roundness Index, yes, you guessed it, is the roundness of your abdomen and your hips. And this is becoming the new standard for medical practitioners all across the country. Why? Because your Body Roundness Index incorporates your hip and your abdominal fat, while your Body Mass Index only incorporates your height and your weight. So if you're very muscular, or if you have a lot of fat around your legs, which are less risky to your heart and your lungs, Body Mass Index is poor prognosticator for, cardiovascular risk.
So according to these BMI, body mass index standards, some tall women can be considered overweight. So I'm just going to give an example. So this is from a chart that I found, and it was in an article talking about the weight of women. So I'm going to talk about that. For example, if you're 5'11" as a woman, for a moderate, which I guess is considered a healthy BMI, the standard weight for that is 136 to 178.5 pounds. However, there are tall women out there. One of them is actually active on TikTok and actively talks about her weight and how, as a tall woman, her weight does not make her, quote unquote, like unhealthy or anything like that. There are tall women out there who are about like a little bit over 200 pounds, which is basically on the brink of being considered overweight. Yes, we don't know everybody's actual situation because there are some things going on internally as well that could potentially make a person unhealthy. I'm not saying that that's her with the case, but on the outside, she does not look like an unhealthy overweight person. It honestly sounds weird, but please just try to understand what I'm saying. I'm actually just going to include a clip of this creator so that you can, I guess, get a better understanding of what I'm trying to say.
Yes, as a big boned tall girl, I feel like even when we are just little girls, lots of people say like, oh wow, you're really big, or wow, you're really tall, and it conditions our brain a little bit. We start thinking we're big, right? This is me at 206 pounds right now. See? We slim thick right now. Slim thick right now. No matter what people say, no matter how you feel, you can still be feminine and beautiful when you're curvy and tall. I think it's so crazy how my weight is controversial right now. But yeah, muscle weighs more than fat. That is why I can look like this and be 205 pounds.
And this actually plays a part into why we potentially need to eat more food than people who are shorter than us, who have similar body types and so forth, or just in general why we need to eat more. Because we have more weight, we need to eat more to maintain that weight. And then on top of that, we also burn more calories. There are more things that we have to move, a lot more weight that we have to move when we're walking, running, picking things up, because we physically have more weight than somebody who is shorter than us but has a more similar body type to us. Because of that, we burn more calories just naturally, so we have to eat more food. I actually did a TikTok video on this as well. See, this is why y'all need to follow me on TikTok so you can stay up to date with all of these things that I talk about that I don't talk about in like a full-length episode. I actually did a TikTok video on this, so I'm going to include it here because I feel like that summarizes it very well. Do taller people really eat more food? Turns out we do. This study says tall people might preferentially choose larger portions because they do need more calories than do shorter people to maintain their weight. We burn more calories when we move around. Therefore, we need to replace that loss with more calories than someone who is shorter than us would. However, something interesting that I found is that weight is more of a relevant factor than height is. Have you ever seen two people who are the same weight but different heights? One may look slimmer than the other, and the slimmer one is typically the taller one. Their weight is just distributed differently. But considering that all else is the same, they would likely need the same amount of calories to maintain their weight. But if you have two people who have similar body types but also have different heights, it is very likely that the taller one may weigh more than the shorter one. So considering that all else is the same, meaning their lifestyle, the taller one is more likely to require more food to maintain their weight. I'm hoping this makes sense. I am not a health type of anything. I graduated with a business degree, so if I'm getting it wrong, I don't have any credentials to back me up. So if you're a tall person worrying about putting on pounds because you're eating more than your shorter friends do not worry about it at all, because you likely actually require more food than your shorter friends do. And if you do put on an extra few pounds, who cares? All bodies are beautiful. Listen to your body, and if it's telling you to eat more food, eat more food. So if you're a tall girly who happens to weigh more than her shorter friends, don't freak out. You are not big. You are not overweight. Check with your doctor though. You're just tall. And technically, we need more weight to live. So that's the first part of it, the whole discussion regarding weight among tall women. They just genuinely want to know. They're genuinely curious about it, because if you have these health standards, considering some of us overweight, or if you're just finding out that, you're fit, your friends are fit, but because they're shorter than you, they may weigh less than you, you're kind of like, what the heck, like what's going on? And you just want to find out in general if other tall women are also experiencing this. It's more so a thing of just like curiosity and just finding out information. And honestly, even building community around it so that it's kind of like a body positivity, body neutrality type of thing where it's like, okay, I do weigh more, but it's not something that I'm going to let affect me or trigger me or anything, because I'm supposed to weigh more as a tall woman in order to live and exist and live a full, healthy life. So that's the first part of it, genuine curiosity. But there is another side to this. So let's talk about that. I actually stumbled across a TikTok video. I'm just gonna straight up play it right now.
Everybody in the comments has been asking me how much I weigh. But first, let's see how much my short king weighs. My turn. Skinny queen.
Essentially, this girl weighs about 222 pounds. I know it's over 200. I think it's 222 pounds. And she's 6'7". But her 5'9" boyfriend, I think it's her boyfriend, there was just a guy there who was 5'9". He weighs 158 pounds, I believe. I don't know. And the video was upside down, so it's kind of like hard for me to tell. But I think 158 pounds, around that. But when you look at this woman who is 6'7", she does not look overweight, quote unquote, or how we see overweight. She doesn't look unhealthily overweight. I don't know, health terms. I graduated with a business degree, do not come for me. But she just doesn't look at face value unhealthy. Her weight is just, distributed evenly. That's also another thing, a distribution of your weight. That's part of the reason why we may not look quote unquote overweight, but then you have these standards that may consider us overweight. It's just that our weight is distributed, I guess you could say, evenly or something like that. So it's not like, oh, all of our weight just pulls into one area where it makes us look like we're overweight. It's just spread out, meaning we look slim, we look lean, and so forth. I probably should have said that a little bit earlier. I hope that made sense. Let me know if that makes sense. Comment below if that makes sense. But something that really caught me in the beginning is when she said everybody in the comments, I guess in another video, has been asking her how much she weighs. And I'm like, huh? That's just such a random thing. That's such a random thing to comment. And it's a little bit out of pocket, in my personal opinion. But I guess in her video, in that video that I just showed, when she's comparing her weight to a man who's 5'9", in those comments, I think honestly answered that question that I just asked. Because why are people saying she can manhandle me, step on me, mommy, mother, please? Bro, what? Okay. Me being me, I obviously had to do a response video. Not a response video. I just did a video. I did a commentary video on it on my TikTok. I'm also going to play that here.
Everybody in the comments has been asking me how much I weigh.
Okay, but why? I genuinely need to know, like, right now. And I didn't believe that this was a thing until I started getting those questions myself. How much do you weigh? What size pants do you wear? What's your wingspan? And no, it was not women who were asking for my measurements because they were interested in the clothes that I was wearing. It's just weird because you wouldn't just go up to somebody in the street and ask them how much they weigh. So what makes you think that it's okay to ask a tall woman how much she weighs? Anyways, I need some answers. And underneath this video, I got two very interesting comments. One of them was like, oh, it's a kink. And I'm like, oh, okay. Then I came across the term called macrophilia, which is the fascination or fetish for larger than life or giant people. And listen, if you're into that, cool. You do you, no judgment here. But when you start projecting that onto people you don't know or people whose consent you don't have, that's when it becomes an issue. And people kind of do that when they ask random tall women how much they weigh. Some people are just so fascinated by a tall woman's weight. So much so that they'll message a random tall woman with a faceless profile with no introduction and just straight up ask, how much do you weigh? Not very demure, not very mindful. And this is way more common than you think. Essentially with the kink thing, with the macrophilia thing, I hope I'm saying that correctly, it kind of just plays into the fetishization of tall women, which I've talked about quite a few times in a couple episodes on this podcast. And I think that's the case even more so because a lot of tall women are just outright sharing this on the internet. And it's not like for modeling purposes or health purposes or anything. Like some are actually sharing it for health purposes and to actually educate other tall women, as I explained earlier in this episode. But others are just saying it honestly, potentially, in my personal opinion, to get comments like this as well. It just really depends on the type of content that they're posting when they're talking about their weight. But I do think that some tall women, especially ones who are like 6'3" and up, are kind of feeding into this fetish, feeding into this obsession, because they're either displaying it all of the time on their socials and their videos and their posts or whatever, but they're also outright asking people to guess their weight. Like they're showing their body and just be like, oh, guess how much I weigh. And in my personal opinion, no tea, no shade to anybody else that does that, but in my personal opinion, I just think that that's a little weird because it's like you're just showing your, not showing your, like, you're showing your body appropriately, somewhat appropriately, and you're just asking people, hey, guess how much I weigh? How much do you think I weigh? What? it. And it's like, listen, you could do whatever you want. You can post whatever content you want as long as it's appropriate and safe for all eyes, because you don't know who's watching on these things. But this behavior does lead to people, users of social media, online users, to want to ask other tall women, random tall women who don't even display this information voluntarily themselves online. That leads people to ask those tall women how much they weigh and then feel entitled to an answer. That's the part that I don't like. They feel entitled to get an answer. They feel entitled to know your weight, as if that information is going to be life-changing for anybody. Because why? Like, genuinely, why? I don't know. I feel like if it's not coming from another tall woman, it's just straight up weird. It's like, I know you're not asking for measurement purposes, like in terms of clothing and stuff, or for health purposes, or just community building purposes to, just be able to love our tall bodies, no matter our height, no matter our weight, and so forth. You're literally doing it to fantasize about that tall woman, because just like in those comments when they're saying, yeah, like manhandle me and like step on me, da 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 da, that's what they're fantasizing about, and that's ultimately what they want to fulfill their desires. And like I said, no tea, no shade. If that's what you're into, listen, go for it. Just projecting that onto strangers that you don't know on the internet, especially without their consent, is just like a little bit frustrating to me. It's just like really, really weird. So yeah, maybe you learned something new today with that. If you ask random tall women how much they weigh and you're listening to this episode, stop asking tall women how much they weigh. Matter of fact, don't ask anybody how much they weigh. It's weird and you're weird. And if you're a tall woman who gets uncomfortable when you're asked that question, if you don't like getting that question, if you don't want people asking you that question, listen, don't be afraid to use that block button. Use the block button, restrict button, delete button, all of that. Don't feed into it. Don't try to argue. I mean, you listen, if you want a good time, if you want a good laugh, you can. You could be like, why does it matter to you? Like, if you want to start an argument, I'm not saying you should do that, but if you just like feel like you want to, like, yeah, I'm not telling you what to do. Just for the most part, just ignore it, delete it, block the person, restrict the person, because if that really makes you uncomfortable, like, you need to protect your peace. So that's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Just kind of like as an overall summary about the whole thing with the weight of tall women, there is one side to it where it's like out of genuine curiosity, especially if it's coming from other tall women, just as a way to see like, okay, are other tall women like around the same weight as me? Like, do they also weigh more than their friends? Like, am I going crazy type of situation? But then there's also this other side where it's like people have a kink for that. Macrophilia, still hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, and them just like feeding into their fetish, their fantasies, their desires. And if it's something that you're personally not comfortable with, then just be careful of that. And if you are comfortable with it, screw it. YOLO. You only live once. Do it. Go for it, etc. But I'm just trying to say that with that last part, not every tall woman, is into that. So let's just be careful who we ask these types of questions to. Thank you. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are. If you've ever gotten random messages or random comments from people who are asking you how much you weigh if you're a tall girl, how did you handle that? Yeah, leave that in the comments or DM me or something. How did you handle that? We can share those types of experiences so that other tall women who are, experiencing this, they don't feel alone and feel like weird about it. Like, because this is actually a common thing. So send me a DM, let me know in the comments. And until then, I'll catch you in the next one. Good night and goodbye.